My name is Renee Jensen and I'm 35 years old. This is my testimony on how I was delivered of evil spirits which brought about my total healing from MS. I am married with 2 children and 2 stepchildren. MS is very difficult to identify and to diagnose. It is a collection of symptoms that over a prolonged period of years, that after you have displayed these symptoms, they're finally able to collectively give you a diagnosis. There are no direct tests that clearly indicate that you have this disease. There are some diagnostic tests that can be done that would indicate the possibility of the sickness or the illness, but nothing, there's no blood test or x-ray that specifically tells you that yes, you indeed have multiple sclerosis. It is mostly just a collection of certain types of symptoms. In January of 1986, I progressively got weaker and weaker, and I thought I was experiencing prolonged flu symptoms. It was a bad year for Asian flu, and that's what I thought was wrong. Well, what would happen was I would be sick with a lot of weakness and extreme fatigue, muscle soreness, and upset stomach, things like that, and that would last for about a month or two, and I would push through it and continue working, and then it would subside. Then I started having severe migraine headaches. At that time, I did not know that migraine headaches, severe migraine headaches, was also a symptom of multiple sclerosis. I don't think most people realize that it is in that category. I was so sick over the course of that spring and into the summer with headaches that I was hospitalized twice. I had one migraine that lasted 3 weeks where I could not even open my eyes. All forms of light bothered my eyes. I had to wear sunglasses or keep my eyes shut. This included dizziness and nausea and vomiting, and I was really sick. Even with diagnostic tests in the hospital, they could not decide what was wrong with me. The doctor sent me over to a specialist in the next state and wanted me to get into biorhythms and biofeedback and stress reduction and therapy, and I refused to do that. I knew that was pretty much ungodly. I wasn't convinced at that time, however, as I am now that I'm in deliverance, that it was really demonic. But at that time, I did not believe that it would really help. I did not believe that stress was really my problem. It wasn't until October of 1987 that I really realized that I had MS. I had been having a lot of the symptoms come and go, and I had been going to doctors for many months. I thought maybe it was my thyroid or other things that were causing it. But one day I woke up and I had prickling and tingling in my fingertips. And as a nurse, I knew immediately that it was the early signs of multiple sclerosis. And then I started to look back over the year, that particular year and the year before, and the several years before that, where I would have varied symptoms where I would go to reach to pick up a jar or a glass and it would fall through my hand and I wouldn't realize. I thought maybe it was just a silly accident or that I was just overly tired. But I started to recognize that over the years I had been having various symptoms, some of those symptoms I will go into a little more detail later on. But at this particular time in October, I became very frightened. I went in and talked to my regular doctor. I had tests for Lyme's disease done because I was having Lyme's disease symptoms, and that was negative. I was having so much muscular pain and weakness on my right side that I couldn't even grasp a pen in order to write. My doctor was very concerned, so he sent me to a rheumatologist in the next state at a special clinic. And that doctor also did some tests, and I told him that I was having the prickling and tingling in my fingertips, which had started to migrate up my arms and into my legs then at that time also. Within a couple of months, I really started to get full-blown manifestations. I mentioned to him the possibility of MS. He said yes, that was a possibility, but being that there is no cure and no effective treatment for MS, doctors are very cautious about putting a multiple sclerosis label on you. They kind of nurse you along, they kind of coax you and give you lots of encouragement, inflated well, it's not even, they can't, there's really nothing they can tell you. They just try to keep your spirit up, and they keep encouraging you that, well, don't worry about it, it's, we'll find out what's wrong, and they always want to put the label of stress and maybe psychotherapy and things like this, a vacation, things would calm down. Well, they know. Once you have the prickling, the tingling, the numbness sensation, they know what it is, but they don't want you to panic because there is no hope. That virtually what it comes down to is there is no hope. And there are so many people that when they're given a diagnosis of MS, immediately plummet into a very deep depression. And they usually end up in a wheelchair and never get out again. So doctors are very cautious about discouraging a person. Within a few months, I had lost control of my bladder, my bowel. My legs became heavier. They felt like they was tied down with 100-pound weights. I started to get a walk, which in nursing we call a gait, that was very wide stance. It was almost like a baby, a toddler who was learning how to walk, kind of waddles, and their legs are very awkward, and I would lose my balance frequently. We heat our home with a wood stove. Frequently, if I would try to put wood into the wood stove, I would lose my balance. Without warning, like a dizziness would come over me, and I would fall onto the stove and burn myself. I was being shuffled from various doctors in 3 different states surrounding where I live in Wisconsin to see if there were anything that they could do for me, because I was actively seeking a diagnosis. I knew that my whole life had changed. I lost my job. I couldn't work. I could hardly take care of myself at home, and I needed to know for sure what was wrong and what they were going to do for me. I was very, very full of fear. Being that I have knowledge of what the disease can do and I have seen it, I was very, very fearful. So they performed a lot of electrical stimulation tests to see if there's nerve impairment. I had an MRI scan, which was done on my brain. It's a magnetic resonance imaging. I had I have bone scan, radioactive bone scan. I had many diagnostic tests, and I also had a spinal tap. All of these tests showed that none of them are indicative or point clearly to MS, but or tell you that for sure that you have it, but they did point to that direction. And the doctor that I saw in the Marshfield Clinic in Wisconsin also had MS himself. He was a neurologist, and he told me that there was definitely right-sided weakness that they found in the test. And he said that if this is MS, he said, you will know it, you will only progressively get worse. This is something that will just totally change your life. At that point, I did start to go into a depression. And then along came a lady who moved into my neighborhood, who I was told had MS also, and she shared with me that there was a treatment in West Germany, that there was an internationally famous doctor who took care of many celebrities, including former President Reagan and many others, for cancer, for multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, and many other diseases that were normally terminal. People that could not get care or treatment, or the treatment had not been successful in the United States, would frequently go to this clinic in Hanover, West Germany. So my husband and I, we were in a Pentecostal church at that time, and we had sought the Lord daily for healing. We were, not knowing anything too much about deliverance and nothing about curses or anything like that. We were just seeking the Lord for healing because we knew, as Spirit-filled believers, we knew that God provided healing for His children. I would go to the church. I had played the piano at the church. I was a pianist there for 3 years, and I would seek the Lord every week. I would go to the altar for prayer, and I'd ask the brethren to lay hands on me and to ask the Lord for wisdom and direction. And I just kept getting worse, and I heard absolutely nothing from the Lord. No one had any word from the Lord, except one brother came to me after a service once and said, well, I saw God heal you this morning when you went up for prayer. And I said, okay, I'll accept that. I didn't see anything. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything different in my spirit or in my body, but I said, I'm willing to accept that. Well, inevitably, it proved not to be true. And what actually happened was many of the brethren became so discouraged with me that I had not been healed, that I was only getting worse. that they really shunned us, my husband and myself. People did not come to our home to see how we were. I live very, very short distance, almost in the backyard of the church, the pastor. No one came to see us, to check on us. They didn't look out for my husband or for my children, who were much younger at the time. And it was really very much a stumbling block to our faith. We felt totally abandoned by the church body. I don't know if it was so much that people didn't know what to do or they didn't know what to say, but there was only one sister, an older sister in the Lord, that would call, or she would bring a treat over something for my family once in a while. Otherwise, the rest of the church body just basically went on with their lives and just totally forgot about us, except that there was very evident signs at times at church that they were almost hostile to me because I had not received my healing, which put us much more of a burden on me. It was very, very discouraging. I didn't know why I had not been healed. I knew what the Word said. I was claiming the Word. I was standing on the Word. Night after night, I would be on my knees and I would weep because I saw the destruction of my body, and I was seeing the destruction of my home, of my husband's faith. All within a month's time, I had lost my job with my income. My husband had been married before we had both been divorced, and before we had married each other, and we both had children from our previous marriages. The same month that I lost my income and was diagnosed with MS, my husband's child support had been doubled because of a new law in our state. So, I mean, we went into financial ruin within a month. I was desperately ill, and we went into financial ruin. And then on top of it, within a couple of months later, my husband's insurance through his job went bankrupt. So within a year's time, I was critically ill. I had lost my job. We were financially strapped, and we were about $10,000 in debt because of my illness and the lack of insurance coverage at that time. So we were hard hit by the enemy. We were almost broken and devastated. I can remember times being so sick and being in so much pain that when my family would come home from work and from school, I would sit at the kitchen table and watch my husband and my children try to prepare the meal, and I would try to give them instructions, and my husband would become very, very frustrated. He was so burdened with working his full-time job and coming home to what he didn't know how I was going to be. He would come home to a desperately ill woman, and quite often one of my children would have to stay home from school just to take care of me. He became so discouraged that one day he just told me, go in the bedroom and stay there. Just get out of my way. I don't want to look at you. I don't want to see you. You're more of a hindrance than you are a help. And I can remember Sunday after Sunday on holidays, Mother's Day, I would be left at home alone in bed. I was so sick. And my family would go to church, and then they would go to, like a family party or something for a birthday or anniversary or a holiday, and I was left at home. I felt totally abandoned by my family, by God. I felt abandoned by everyone. There was nothing anybody could do for me. It was some of the hardest years that I've ever experienced. Well, about this trip to Germany, this lady had told us about, we became very encouraged by that. We had no money, so we found out that there was an agency in the near the town that we live, which was called the Superior Area Medical Emergency Fund, and they're a nonprofit organization that raises funds for medical emergencies for people that are of low income. So we applied, and they helped finance our trip. My husband and I went to West Germany. I was in the hospital there for 2 weeks. I received medication and treatment from this doctor. He told me that I had multiple sclerosis type 2, which there's a type 1 and there's a type 2. Type 2 has all the muscular pain, it has the muscular weakness and fatigue, and it has migraine headaches that differentiate it from the other type of multiple sclerosis. Both types will have the nerve impairment, the tingling, the numbness, and all of the other symptoms. So while I was there, I underwent IV, which is intravenous treatment. I had to have injections into my veins 3 times a week. I had to have injections of B12, more like a nutritional kind of thing, injections into the hip once a week. I was on about 60 pills a day. It took me about 3-4 hours to lay out my medication for a 2-week period of time. I would put them in little cups and then transfer them into little bags so that I had my morning pills, my noon pills, and my night pills. I was on a special diet of absolutely no dairy products, no sugar, and it was just a very, very stringent diet. There was a lot of things that I could not eat or I could not drink that had chemicals in them that the doctor believed would be chemical reactions that would stimulate the disease. So when I came home, I did improve. I became much better within a couple of weeks. I could see the changes within 3-4 months. I was very, very much better. I could not go back to work. I did not have the strength to function in a job. I had 2 car accidents while I was sick, and so I was very fearful of driving because my depth perception was off, and I would have bouts of where I could not remember where I was. I couldn't remember what I was saying. It was almost like Alzheimer's, where you can't remember things, or you're like a stroke victim, where you can't. You know what you want to say, but you can't remember how to say the word. It's gone. It's just stuck, and you get very, very frustrated. My husband would finish my sentences half the time for me. So I have a lot of sympathy for stroke patients and Alzheimer's patients. It's very, very painful, very frustrating, very, very devastating to the family. Well, I went on this treatment, and I was on it for well over a year before my husband and I got involved in deliverance. I started going to a deliverance fellowship, and I had to drive 45-50 minutes one way to go, but we went on Friday nights, and I started asking for prayer. At one of the prayers, or the very first night that I was there, it was the first time I was ever in a mass deliverance. I started manifesting right away. My manifestations at that time were extreme fatigue, weakness, nausea, sweats. I mean, it was like very similar to my MS symptoms, which had been arrested because of this treatment that I was on. But I became very, very sick. And after the prayer that they lead you in was over, someone came over to pray for me, who turned out now she's our pastor's wife. She started to pray for me, and she asked me if I had a history of sexual abuse or deep hurt, and I said yes, that I had been an incest and rape victim as a child. I was molested by my father when I was young, and one of my brothers, he and his friends had gang raped me when I was a small child, and I had repressed those memories for 28 years. And then the Lord, as a new Christian, the Lord had brought that back to my memory and helped me to deal with that. But I had gone into secular counseling for it for a year. I went to the church first, and the church told me they could not help me, that to go to the Human Resource Center in my town, in the local town. The church just did not feel that they were equipped to help me with the severity of the problems that I was experiencing. So I went through secular counseling and the psychology of it. So, of course, knowing that, I needed to have prayer for that. But this particular night, I had prayer for deep hurt. I had prayer for hatred of father and brother. I had prayer for spirits of murder, for incest, perversion, sodomy. At that time, I had full-blown wild manifestations, and that was the beginning of receiving healing. After that evening, I did not realize that I was getting release from the multiple sclerosis. I just felt a release in my spirit from these strong, very, very strong hold of this hatred and these feelings that I had. I kept going back on Friday nights for deliverance. At one point, I had prayer for Jezebel and Jezebel-related spirits of witchcraft. When I was a child, I had played with a Ouija board. I had done palm reading. I had done sky gazing in horoscopes, and I was really into UFOs when I was a young woman. I believed in them. I thought, hey, if they're out there, please land in my yard. I didn't know that this was wrong and it was of the enemy. I had pretended to do seances when I was a child. I had a very, very strong fantasy life. I had a very broken home life. I was raised in a Bible-believing church. My mother and father professed to be born-again Christians who went to a congregational church. Later, we were Baptists. My mother taught Sunday school and sang in the choir. My father had been a deacon. But all along, see, there was there was this cover-up. We didn't talk about the incest. My father had a very possessive relationship with me. He was very, very domineering in our family. He was the dictator type personality. My mother was very repressed. She had a very, very sick Jezebelic mother that she took care of, who was an unbeliever, so that she was very controlled by. Her father had been an alcoholic and beat his wife and spent all the money, on alcohol, was not a saved person, and died at a very young age and left his wife with 8 children. So there was a lot of bitterness in my mother's family, alcoholism. My grandmother, who was also into forms of witchcraft. On my father's side, there's an Indian heritage and a Jewish heritage, and there was adultery in his family, alcoholism in his family. So there was a lot of these curses at work in my life that I did not know were there. At one point in one of the deliverance sessions, one of the brothers got a word from the Lord that I did not have multiple sclerosis. I had multiple spirits, that you could not attack the disease as MS itself, but to break down the symptoms one by one and deal with them as individual spirits, which is what we started to do. I had prayer for unforgiveness, for mother, rejection, abandonment, rejection from father, from the brothers. My older brother totally rejected me. He didn't have anything to do with me. He was 8 years older than I was, and he was totally isolated from the rest of the family. The brother that had assaulted me was what my other brother and I call the golden child. He was a lot like my father. He was favored by my mother and father and continues to be favored and protected, like he's never done anything wrong. We have a very dysfunctional family. I had prayer for pierced ears. I took out all my pierced earrings and I burned them and destroyed them because it's the mutilation of the body, and I was convicted by that, and that made a significant difference and really gave me a breakthrough in my deliverance also. I got prayer for a dysfunctional family. My family had been very, very religious, but totally denies the power of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. For deliverance for spirits of bitterness, anger, insanity, confusion, curses of mental illness, curses of being a liar, curses of embracing sickness and illness out of self-pity. I had prayer for spirits of fear. Fear of ugliness, fear of poverty, abandonment, disability, fear of failure, fear of rejection from men, fear of rejection from God, fear of the unknown, fear of being responsible, fear of being irresponsible, fear of heights. I was just full of fear. And insecurity, self-pity, self-hatred, condemnation, regret, fear of memories, a worldly refuge, taking counsel of the ungodly. I had to have deliverance from these influences. After a period of time, I didn't really recognize that I had been, that my symptoms were elapsing because of the deliverance, because I was still on this treatment. And I knew that it was time to make a decision, and I had asked the brethren whether or not I should go off of this treatment, and they said that was not their decision, but that God would tell me. Their wisdom was sound. They didn't tell me to throw away my medication. They told me that at the appropriate time, God would let me know. And indeed, He did. On May 19th, which is my birthday, 1989, the Lord spoke to me. I had my shot that morning and had taken my pills, and I was reading the Word, and the Lord spoke to my spirit and said that it was time to stop this treatment, that every time I put that needle in my arm, I was just feeding the demons. It was like what I pictured in my mind was a food frenzy with a bunch of sharks when you throw meat into the water, and there's this food frenzy for sharks. And the Lord said, I did not send you to Germany, because that's what I had believed in my heart. I thought this was my answer, that this was how I was going to get well, was this treatment. And the Lord rebuked me very strongly and told me that I had sought out this disease. I had sought out this illness instead of recognizing that I should have had a shield of faith and rebuked the symptoms as they came. I totally embraced it. I was so weak at that time, and weak in my faith and weak in my knowledge. That's why the Word says we perish for a lack of knowledge. I accepted everything that I was told, and not only accepted it, but I sought it out. I sought out the diagnosis of MS and embraced it, and that's why it had such a stronghold on my life. The Lord told me that He didn't send me to Germany. He allowed me to go. but he did not send me. He said he never sends his children to the ungodly for counsel or for treatment of any kind. This doctor was humanitarian. He was a good person, but he was an unbeliever, and he was a practicing witch. He believed in water witching, and he believed in fortune telling and the zodiac signs and all these things that they played a part in the illness. And he counseled me to have my home someone come out, a dowser, and tell me about the currents that were the current water flow under my home, and to turn my bed and to do all these various things because electricity and electrical currents made a difference on this disease. Well, I didn't do any of that. I knew that that was wrong. But what I didn't do was I did not listen to the Holy Spirit when he told me that this was wrong, to check this. I just accepted the rest of what I wanted from the doctor because I thought it was my only hope. It was my only answer. Which the Lord then that day on the 19th of May told me that no, this was not my answer. What it did was it reinforced the demonic stronghold that I had by making me drug dependent. When I was drug dependent and I got better from the drugs and this treatment, it caused me to no longer seek healing, no longer seek God's intervention or what he wanted for me. Please turn over the tape. He started to migrate over into my lane, and we were both going 55, 60 miles an hour. And for some reason, that man never looked up, and he came totally into my lane, and it was going to be a head-on collision. And I looked up, and I thought, well, God, this is it. I'm going home. And immediately, the Lord quickened to my spirit in those seconds that it was the enemy, that he was trying to do this to me. And I said, I rebuke you. And all I could do was say, Jesus, 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 the whole time. I swerved over to the right hand, off to the shoulder, which there's no shoulder really to speak of on this road, and there was a power line and a mailbox there, and I thought, well, I'm going to hit that and that'll take care of me, you know. But I really believe it was the power of the Lord and angels that were helping me, because I don't remember how I managed to really miss this guy, because he was right on top of me. I laid on the horn and he didn't even hear it. He was, I don't know, the enemy just had him really bound, because he didn't even know what he was doing. And he was in a very, very big car, and the impact of that car against mine, I would have been totally crushed. So what I'm saying is the enemy gets angry with you if you are an active warrior. But don't let that frighten you. I cried after I had this experience. Immediately after I was spared and I gained control of my car, I cried. I didn't cry because I was afraid. I didn't cry because of what could have happened. I wept because I realized God's power is so tremendous. That even when I knew in my heart that the enemy was trying to destroy me, he was either trying to severely cripple me or totally kill me, because because I am actively pursuing the deliverance ministry as a deliverance worker, I feel that God has called me to that. The enemy wanted to take me out, and I knew that God had spared me, and I wept and I gave thanks because the name and the power and the blood of Jesus is so complete. I just rejoiced at what the Lord had done for me. And I want to encourage anyone who is hearing this that the power of the Lord and what He did at Calvary is so complete for you that you need nothing else. As a believer, don't accept the world system of healing. It was very hard for me as a nurse to totally reprogram my mind, to renew my mind, as the Word said, with the mind of Christ, because I was so into drugs and medication and the world's form of therapy, whether it be psychology or medication therapy or physical therapy. I was so involved in that, and it was so ingrained into me because of my training. I thought that was okay. If I was a Christian and I still was functioning in the world system, I thought that was okay. Well, the Lord has since told me, no, what the world has is the world system. It is for the world, and it is totally, radically different than what God's Word has for His children. Subsequently, because of this experience, and I did eventually go back into nursing. I regained my health after my deliverance, and I went back to work as a nurse, and the Lord has since pulled me out of that, which I'm going to do another tape on about nursing and what the Lord has taught me about the nursing field and the field of medicine and nursing homes and hospitals. But the point is that God has a different plan for His children. And it's hard to root out the world system. We need prayer to get the world system, the world's way of thinking, out of our lives and out of our hearts. We need to wash our minds daily with the Word. That is the only way that we're going to be changed. But I encourage anyone who is listening to this, if you have these diseases, seek out the Lord. Seek deliverance. If you are confronted with a person who has mental retardation, any of these significant diseases, illnesses that we recognize as illnesses, attack them with the Word of God. Break down the symptoms. Find out the person's background. Find out that there's a lot of Catholicism and witchcraft that are involved in these deep-rooted diseases. That's what been my experience. That was my own personal experience, was Catholicism, Jezebel. Witchcraft is 90% of these symptoms. Break them down. Look at the family history. Look at anything that you can find out about the person, about their background, about their behavior, what they have been involved in. Break those curses, confess those sins, and watch the walls come down. They will come down. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, or if you're in need of ministry, or any further information about this topic or any other that I can help you with, my address is Post Office Box 62, Hawthorne, Hawthorne, Wisconsin, 54842. My phone number is area code 715-374-3602. God bless you. You can also reach me through Restoration Ministries in care of Pastor Abraham Dueck, D-U-E-C-K, Post Office Box 345, 2 Harbors, Minnesota, 55616.